What is going on, true believers? My name is Jim, and back with you for another edition of Clueless Guy Reviews Brent's Comics. And today, we're taking a look at a doozy. This one is called The Invincible Iron Man Extremis. It's by Warren Ellis and Adi Granov. Now, I used to read comic books a lot when I was a kid. I have obviously grown out of that, although Brent does pull me back from time to time. I'm a big fan of the Marvel movies, though. And one of the things that I hate so much about the latest Marvel movies that keep continuing to come out is that the technology gets more and more goofy. Obviously, you have to keep pushing the boundaries of a movie. You have to keep making the audience believe that the characters are advancing both from a personal standpoint, but also from a technological standpoint. You wouldn't have people using tech from 2002 in a 2018 movie, and I understand that. What I love about this comic book, and you're probably asking yourself, what does this have to do with the review of Iron Man Extremis? Well, I'm going to tell you. This is the most grounded comic I think I've read, which is really saying a lot in a world where superheroes exist and people have super meta powers and that sort of thing. This story is a must read, and I would argue it is one of the best comic books that I've read in a story arc series, maybe with The Dark Knight Returns still edging it out because I love the art style that much. And that's a great place to start at. The artist here, Adi Granov, does this kind of art style that is almost, I want to say, like very realistic. You know, the attention to detail that's in all the characters, the way they grit their teeth, the way that you see all the little wisps of hair on their head. It's a very, very unique way of drawing. And he focuses primarily on the character, and then everything else blends out in the background. And I know you're probably thinking, well, geez, doesn't every comic book do that? But the way that he uses his colors and the way that he really makes the characters pop, it's such a unique art style that really prior to this, other than, again, going back to Dark Knight Returns, I can't honestly say I admired art this much. A lot of times when Brent gives me these comic books, I just blow through them because I just want to get to the story. I kind of glance at the pictures a little bit, but I spent a lot of time, and there's a lot of fight sequences in here, especially at the end, where I spent a good 2 or 3 minutes just staring at each little cell, and that's something I've never done before. So I have to say, from the artwork alone, this thing is a definitive, to me, it really stands out among some of the other books that Brent has let me read up to date. The story, though, I love the story because in this world, Iron Man doesn't have a suit that he just presses a button and it grows out of a watch, or that he just sticks his arms and legs out and it flies onto him. Now, the tech is really neat. This is a comparison now to the Avengers movies and the Iron Man movies that have 3 of them so far, where, you know, Tony Stark will land on his tower, and as he's walking, these robots are coming out and like ripping his armor off, and he seamlessly just walks into his house, and it's like just, you know, another day at the office. This book really takes a lot of time to kind of get into the logistics of the fact that in this world, the Iron Man suit is not automated. It's not like he just presses a button and it just flies to him. He has it shipped everywhere he goes. It's slow. It's cumbersome. As a matter of fact, the first time he fights this main villain, who gets injected with this stuff called Extremis, which is like kind of like a Captain America superpower serum. It just makes you really fast, really strong. At one point, they mentioned the guy runs at over 300 miles an hour. Not even my beloved Spartan 2s could do that. So for him to be able to do that really kind of gives you an idea of just like, this guy is like dialed off the charts and everything. And Tony makes it his personal mission to hunt this guy down. And the first time they fight, Tony Stark gets wrecked, just straight up wrecked. I mean, like, he's going to die. He's like almost on life support. His suit is really keeping him alive. And it's because it's so slow and so cumbersome, and he can't maneuver that fast. And he has to think about, you know, pulling levers. And I don't want to say levers in terms of like, it's not like he's a little tiny person inside this giant cockpit, but like the way that he moves his arms and legs, it's just not fast enough. And even though it's got a lot of tech to it, the computer's great, it could scan, it could charge, it self-heals, all these great things that it does. In terms of pure combat, he's clearly outmatched. And I don't want to give away too much of this story. That's just kind of a high-level setup, maybe through book 2. There's 6 total like volumes in this. It's a pretty hefty book. It took me I don't know. Again, I spent a lot of time looking at the art. It took me maybe an hour, hour and a half to read this. And for something like this, for me, I usually blow through these in about 30, 35 minutes. So just give you an idea that it's a little more dense than some of the other books. Not in terms of story per se, but just I think you're going to admire the art. But the fact that, Tony is grounded in this, that it shows him growing as a character. It shows him trying to figure out how to make the Iron Man suit better. There's actually flashbacks in here back to the original incident from the first movie where he makes the first Iron Man suit, where he gets the shards that are going to kill him, the metallic shards that are near his heart. The fact that, he works through that. That's talked about here in a flashback. Really, really good book. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask Brent. And if you guys know, leave a comment below or tweet Brent or whatever. Let him know, to get me more of these, because it says Iron Man 1 through 6. I don't know if there's an Iron Man 7 that picks up with the storyline, but this is a really good arc. And I can't say enough good things about it. If I had to give any criticism, because I don't want to just sit here and say it's the greatest thing ever, I feel like this could have been even longer. And I don't know, in terms of comic books, what a good story arc is. Do fans lose, their attention span is only 6 to 8 episodes? Was the contract that these two writers had to write this story only for 6 books? I feel like they could have done a lot more with the villain. The villain was very one-dimensional. There's a very brief flashback as to why the villain is the villain, and then it's not really mentioned again. I feel like it was hard for me to invest in Tony going to the lengths that he goes to stop this guy when he is so one-dimensional of a villain. It would have been nicer if we got a little bit more background on who this guy was and why he was doing what he's doing. Maybe that's not the point of this. Maybe the point of this is just to show that they wanted to invest in a world in which Tony Stark doesn't have all the answers and doesn't have all the tech, and the villain is just a means to get there. But I think the story would have been a lot more meaningful to see the lengths that Tony goes to, the willingness that he's putting himself in harm, putting on this suit, which is an imperfect suit, and he knows it. There's a lot of really good scenes where he's fighting, and you see the stats. Like, you look like through his eyes. You see the HUD, and it's like, cannons charging 30%, 40%. And you could see, like, him working through these problems, trying to, like, buy himself time while his guns recharge, or that his power is about to be diminished because he's been beaten up so bad, or whatever. I like that stuff, but the fact that what he does in order to, try to overcome this evil is really far-fetched when you kind of just met the guy. And again, only six books to kind of get through a pretty, I would say, altering in Tony Stark's world, a very different way. I mean, he's a very different Iron Man after. I would argue that he is much more of an Iron Man, literally, than he was before this whole Extremis story arc began. But I would have liked to see a little more attention to that. But I know it sounds like I'm harping on that. That's the one negative I could say, but I really enjoyed this book. And I highly recommend you guys check it out. When you leave a comment or subscribe to Brent's channel below, give him some more suggestions for me on things that I can continue to read. If you know of more things like this, I want to read them. If this guy, Addy Granoff, does more work that's like on this art style, I am totally invested. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Get out there and read your favorite comic book. And until next time, I will see you guys in the funny pages.